My name is Natalie Pierce. I'm 34 years old. At 10:46 on a Monday morning in family court, my husband placed one hand on the witness table, looked at the judge with the wounded dignity of a man who had rehearsed in a mirror, and said, "I'm worried about Natalie's mental stability." His mother sat directly behind him. Of course she did. Diane Pierce wore a cream blazer, pearl earrings, and the tight, sympathetic expression she used whenever she wanted strangers to believe she was suffering through someone else's flaws with Christian patience. She held a tissue in one hand, though she had not cried. She never cried when it might smear mascara. She only dabbed. My husband, Evan, continued. "She's been paranoid," he said. "Accusatory, obsessive about money. She keeps saying funds are missing, but the truth is, Your Honor, she's been emotional and irrational since I filed." Since he filed. Not since I found the transfer receipts. Not since I discovered the credit card bills. Not since his mother began calling me unstable in family group chats after I refused to give her access to our savings account. Since he filed. That was the story they wanted. Poor Evan. Dutiful son. Responsible husband. Trapped between a fragile wife and a mother only trying to help. I sat beside my attorney, Claire Donovan, with my hands folded on the table. My nails were short and unpolished. My wedding ring was gone, leaving a pale line on my finger that felt more honest than the ring ever had. In front of Claire sat 3 blue folders, 1 black binder, and a flash drive. Evidence, if anyone asked. Not feelings, not accusations, not tears. Evidence. Evan's attorney asked, "Can you explain what you mean by obsessive about money?" Evan sighed. She started checking accounts constantly, questioning normal household purchases, accusing my mother of taking money, saying I was hiding things. It became impossible to have a conversation. Diane dabbed the corner of her eye. The judge, Honorable Meredith Klein, watched him without expression. Claire wrote 1 word on her legal pad and turned it slightly so I could see. Good. That was Claire's way of saying let him keep going. So I did. I sat quietly while the man who had spent 2 years moving marital money into a hidden bank account tried to make financial literacy sound like hysteria. I sat quietly while his mother, who had used our debit card for furniture, salon services, and a down payment on her new SUV, looked at me like I was a family embarrassment. I sat quietly while Evan told the court I was fixated on numbers, as if numbers had not been the only things in our marriage that told the truth. Then his attorney asked the question that changed the air. "Mr. Pierce, did you ever hide marital assets from your wife?" Evan looked almost offended. No. His mother's tissue paused halfway to her cheek. Claire's pen stopped moving. The judge looked down at her notes. My heartbeat did not speed up. That surprised me. Months earlier, I would have felt heat rush to my face. I would have wondered if I looked angry, if angry meant unstable, if speaking clearly would be called aggressive, if staying silent would be called cold. But by then, I had learned something important. When a man is trying to make you look irrational, do not chase him around the room with emotion. Let him lie where the paperwork can reach him. Claire stood slowly. "Your Honor," she said, "when Mr. Pierce finishes direct examination, we will have questions regarding the hidden account ending in 4192. Evan's face changed, only for a second, but I saw it. So did the judge. So did Diane. The tissue finally fell into her lap. The judge looked over her glasses. "Hidden account?" Claire opened the black binder. "Yes, Your Honor. The account into which Mr. Pierce transferred marital funds for 8 months, while representing to my client that their financial strain was caused by her spending." Evan whispered something to his attorney. Diane leaned forward. The courtroom became very still. Claire continued, calm as snowfall. "We also have records showing payments from that account to Mrs. Diane Pierce, luxury retail purchases, vehicle deposits, and cash withdrawals. We have bank statements, transfer confirmations, text messages, and metadata from shared budgeting software." The judge turned back to Evan. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "we will discuss that." Then she looked at me, not with pity, not with suspicion, with attention. And for the first time in that courtroom, the story began to move away from my supposed instability and toward the money they thought I would never find. This is that story. Before I tell you how my husband and mother-in-law learned that calling a woman unstable does not erase bank records, tell me where you are watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment someone tried to make your proof sound like paranoia. And if you connect with stories about women who were blamed, manipulated, underestimated, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not beg to be believed. Some women bring statements. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in a 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery, where the stairwell always smelled faintly of yeast, cinnamon, and rain-soaked coats. My parents were practical people. My father drove a city bus for 29 years. My mother worked in medical billing and could read an insurance explanation of benefits the way other women read novels. She taught me early that money was not romance, not shame, not mystery. Money was information. When someone says, "Don't worry about the numbers," she told me when I was 16, that is exactly when you read the numbers. I should have listened sooner. I met Natalie Pierce when I was 26 at a charity 5K organized by the hospital where I worked as a patient accounts coordinator. He was there with a corporate team from the software company where he handled client onboarding. He was funny, handsome, confident, and just awkward enough to seem sincere. He joked that he only ran when chased but still finished ahead of half his team. Afterward, he asked if I wanted coffee and said, "I promise not to talk about running." We talked for 2 hours. He asked good questions then. That was what I remembered later when I tried to find the version of him I had married. He asked about my job, my family, my love of old mystery novels, my habit of organizing my pantry alphabetically. He said it was adorable that I tracked expenses in a spreadsheet. He said he admired women who were careful with money because his mother had been, quote, terrible at finances after his father died. That was the first mention of Diane. I met her 3 months later. Diane Pierce was elegant, widowed, and warm in the way a fireplace is warm before you realize the room has no exits. She hugged me too long, called me sweetheart too quickly, and told me within 20 minutes that Evan was all she had left. I felt sorry for her. That was my first mistake. Not compassion. Compassion is not a mistake. The mistake was letting her grief become a reason I ignored her control. Evan was her only child. His father had died of a heart attack when Evan was 19, and Diane had built a mythology around sacrifice. She had raised him alone. She had given up everything. She had made him the man he was. She said those things often, especially in rooms where Evan could hear. At first, I thought it was love. Later, I understood it was ownership. When Evan proposed, Diane cried harder than I did. At our engagement dinner, she touched my hand and said, "You're not taking him from me. You're joining us." Us. I smiled because I was young enough to mistake warning signs for family closeness. We married when I was 29 in a small garden ceremony. My parents paid for the flowers. Evan and I paid for the venue. Diane insisted on paying for the rehearsal dinner, then reminded everyone for years how generous it had been. She wore pale blue to the wedding and told 3 people she had chosen it because white would be in poor taste, which meant she had considered it. Marriage began well enough. Evan was affectionate. He made coffee. He sent funny texts. He liked that I cooked on Sundays and planned our grocery budget. We bought a modest house with a fenced backyard and a kitchen with ugly tile I planned to replace eventually. We opened joint accounts, kept individual spending accounts, and agreed on savings goals. Emergency fund, home repair fund, vacation fund, future baby fund. That last one hurt later. The symbolic object in this story was my green budget notebook. Even though I used spreadsheets, I kept a paper notebook because writing numbers by hand made them feel real. My mother gave it to me the year I married Evan. On the first page, she wrote, "Clarity is not distrust." I thought it was sweet. I did not know it would become a lifeline. For the first 2 years, I handled most household finances because I was better at it, and Evan did not mind. He paid certain bills, I paid others, and every Sunday night I updated our shared tracker. Evan teased me gently. Budget queen, spreadsheet wife, chief financial officer of our kitchen. I laughed then. The jokes had affection in them, or maybe I wanted them to. Diane began asking for help in small ways. Her property tax escrow was wrong. Her dishwasher broke, her medication copay increased, her roof needed repair, her car insurance went up. Evan wanted to help. I understood that. She was his mother. We had enough room in the budget for occasional support. Occasional became monthly. Monthly became assumed. $100 here, $300 there, a utility bill, a credit card minimum, a temporary insurance payment. When I suggested we create a fixed support amount and track it clearly, Evan looked offended. She's my mom, Natalie. I know. She sacrificed everything for me. I know. Then why are you acting like she's a bill? I looked at him. Because money leaving our account is a bill. He stared at me like I had said something cruel. That was the first time numbers became moral in our marriage. If I asked where money went, I was cold. If Diane needed money, she was family. If I wanted limits, I was selfish. If Evan gave without discussion, he was a good son. Diane noticed the tension and learned how to play it softly. She never demanded directly at first. She sighed. She hinted. She called Evan when she knew I was nearby, but not part of the conversation. I hate to bother you. I'll figure something out. Don't tell Natalie if it causes trouble. That last sentence was poison disguised as consideration. By year 3, our savings had stopped growing. By year 4, they had begun shrinking. I sat at the kitchen table one Sunday with my green notebook, looking at the numbers. Evan was in the living room watching a game. Diane had just left after dinner with 3 containers of leftovers and a story about needing new tires. I said, Evan, we need to talk about your mother's expenses. He muted the television too slowly. What about them? We gave her almost $9,000 last year. He laughed as if I had made an error. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. I showed him the page. He glanced at it. That includes gifts. It includes money transferred from our household account to your mother. She's not some stranger. I didn't say she was. She's alone. I know. She's on a fixed income. So are we, if we keep spending more than we earn. His jaw tightened. Don't make this about math. I blinked. It is math. No, Natalie, it's family. That sentence was the hinge on which our marriage began to turn. Diane's spending became bolder after that conversation. She started using Evan's credit card by accident because it was saved in her phone. She ordered furniture and said she thought she was using her own card. She booked salon appointments and said Evan had offered. She bought a new television and told him she needed something cheerful in the evenings. When I questioned the charges, Evan said he would handle it. He did not. Instead, he changed. Slowly at first, he became secretive with his phone. He stopped leaving bank statements on the desk. He said he wanted to simplify our budgeting and suggested I stop tracking every little thing because it made him feel monitored. The word cheaters and financial liars love because it makes accountability sound like surveillance. I said, I track our household budget. He said, you track me. I told him that if he felt tracked by receipts, maybe he should look at the receipts. He slept in the guest room. Then came the baby fund. We had been trying to conceive for 8 months. Not long enough for doctors to panic, long enough for hope to become scheduled. I had quietly saved $14,000 in a separate high-yield account for future medical costs, maternity leave cushion, and nursery expenses. Evan knew about it. We both contributed. One Tuesday in May, I logged in and saw the balance had dropped to $8.200. I stared at the screen. Transfer to Pierce Family Reserve. I had never heard of that account. I called Evan. He did not answer. I called again. He texted, in meeting. What's up? I replied. What is Pierce Family Reserve? No response. I waited 13 minutes. Then, I moved some money temporarily. We'll talk tonight. Temporarily. That night, he came home with flowers. Not my favorite kind. Grocery store roses wrapped in plastic. That was when I knew he had done something wrong. I stood in the kitchen. Where is the money? He set the flowers on the counter. Mom had an emergency. What emergency? She needed a vehicle deposit. I stared at him. You took money from our baby fund for your mother's car? She needed reliable transportation. She has a car. It's old. So is mine. He rubbed his forehead. Natalie, don't start. Don't start. You get intense about money. No, I get informed. He threw his keys onto the counter. It was my money, too. Our money, for our child. We don't have a child. The room went silent. I felt the sentence hit before he did. His face changed. Natalie, I didn't mean. Yes, I said quietly. You did. He reached for me. I stepped back. Something broke that night. Not loudly, no screaming. No thrown flowers. Just a quiet fracture between the life I thought we were building and the one Evan had already begun funding without me. I asked to see the new account. He refused. It's just a temporary holding account. Show me. No. Then return the money. I will when things settle. When? He had no answer. The next morning, I changed the password to the baby fund and moved what remained into an account only I could access. Legally, it was still marital money. Practically, it was protected from Diane's next emergency. That was when the campaign began. Diane called me that afternoon. Her voice was trembling. Natalie, I don't know what I did to make you hate me. I sat at my desk at work, staring at a claims report. I don't hate you. Evan says you're upset about the car. Evan took money from our baby fund without asking. She gasped. Oh, honey, that account was causing you so much pressure. Maybe it's better not to obsess over a baby before God sends one. I closed my eyes. What? I only mean stress can affect fertility. There it was. She had taken my money and found a way to make my body responsible. I said, Diane, do not discuss my fertility with me again. She began crying. I was trying to help. No, you were trying to justify. She hung up. By dinner, Evan said his mother was devastated, and I needed to apologize. For what? For making her feel like a thief. I looked at him. Then she should stop benefiting from stolen decisions. His face darkened. You are not yourself lately. There it was, the first version of unstable. Not yourself. Emotional, obsessive, paranoid, cold, controlling. I wrote them in my green notebook that night. Not because I enjoyed pain. Because patterns need names. June 9th. Evan said I am not myself after I asked about account. June 12th. Diane told family group chat. She is worried about my stress and fixation. June 15th. Evan refused account access. June 17th. Charge for Diane's salon package on marital card. June 18th. Evan said I was paranoid. July 1st. Transfer $2,000 to unknown account. July 3rd, Diane posted new living room furniture. July 5th. Evan said I imagine connections because I want to dislike his mother. By July, I knew our marriage was in danger. By August, I knew it was already over. The hidden account revealed itself because Evan got careless with paper. For all his secrecy, he still hated clutter enough to dump receipts on the entryway table. One evening, I found a bank envelope tucked under a stack of grocery coupons. Pierce Family Reserve. A statement summary. Account ending 4192. Evan's name only. I did not open the envelope. I took photos of the outside, then I searched our shared budgeting app. Evan had disconnected several bank feeds, claiming technical issues. But metadata remained in exported transaction records. I knew because I had worked with billing systems long enough to understand that deleting a connection does not always delete history. I exported everything. CSV files, transaction logs, transfer records, dates, amounts, payee names. Then I called an attorney. Claire Donovan specialized in divorce, financial misconduct, and high-conflict family systems. She had silver hair, black glasses, and the kind of calm that makes dishonest people nervous. I sat in her office with the green notebook in my lap and told her the short version. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked, "Do you have records?" I placed the notebook on her desk. Yes. She opened it. Read. Turned a page. Read more. Then said, "Your husband made a mistake." Only one? He married a woman who writes things down. I almost cried. Not because it was funny, because someone finally understood that my records were not symptoms. They were survival. Claire filed first. That was not the plan originally, but Evan forced it. When I told him we needed financial transparency or separation, he said maybe divorce would be best if I could not trust him. He expected me to panic. Instead, I said, I agree. His face told me everything. He had wanted threat. I gave him acceptance. The filing went out the next week. Evan moved into Diane's house temporarily. Diane told everyone I had pushed him out because I was not well. The family group chats turned strange. People sent vague messages about prayer, mental health, forgiveness, and stress. Evan's cousin Monica wrote, I hope you get the help you need. I replied, thank you. My attorney is helping me obtain full financial disclosure. No one responded. Discovery began. At first, Evan produced incomplete statements. He claimed the hidden account was for family support planning and contained no significant marital funds. Claire subpoenaed records. The bank complied. The truth arrived in a stack of statements that smelled like printer toner and consequences. 8 months. Transfers from our joint savings. $37, $500. Transfers from our checking. $11, $800. Credit card payments from hidden account. $9, $200. Payments to Diane Pierce. $18, $600. Vehicle deposit. $6,000. Furniture store. $4, $850. Luxury spa and salon. $2, $140. Cash withdrawals, $7, $300. Airline tickets for Diane and Evan, $1, $780. Restaurant charges, jewelry store, home goods, a payment toward Diane's overdue property tax. And one transfer labeled NP Settlement Prep. NP. Natalie Pierce. My name reduced to a line item in the account used to prepare against me. Claire looked at that one for a long time. Well, she said, that was unwise of him. I asked, can the court do anything? Yes. How much? Enough. Enough. A word small enough to hold on to. The hearing where Evan called me unstable was supposed to address temporary support, exclusive use of the house, and financial restraints. Evan wanted access to the house, relief from certain bills, and an order preventing me from harassing him and Diane about finances. Harassing. By asking where the money went. His declaration said I had become emotionally volatile, suspicious, controlling, and fixated on his mother. Diane submitted her own declaration saying she feared my unpredictable behavior and worried I might destroy family relationships beyond repair. Claire read it and said she means you found the bank account. I said yes. In court, Evan performed sadness well. He said I had changed. He said I saw betrayal where there was none. He said Diane had only accepted help because family supports family. He said I had weaponized spreadsheets. Weaponized spreadsheets. Claire wrote that phrase down with visible pleasure. When cross-examination began, she stood with one folder. Only one at first. Mr. Pierce, she said, you testified that Ms. Pierce has been irrationally accusing you of hiding money. Yes. And you testified you did not hide marital assets. That's correct. Claire approached the witness table. Do you recognize this bank statement? Evan looked at it. His throat moved. Yes. What account is this? An account I opened. Ending in 4192? Yes. Was Ms. Pierce listed on this account? No. Was she aware of it when you opened it? He hesitated. I don't remember. Claire smiled politely. You do not remember whether your wife knew you opened an individual account into which marital funds were transferred? It wasn't hidden. Did you give her access? No. Did you provide statements when she asked about missing funds? She was emotional. The judge looked up. Claire said, that was not my question. Evan flushed. No. Claire placed another document on the screen. Transfer from joint savings, May 14th, $5, $800. What was this for? My mother needed transportation. A vehicle deposit? Yes. Did Miss Pierce approve that? We discussed helping my mom. Did she approve that transfer? No. Another document. June 1st, $2,000 transferred from joint checking to the hidden account. What was that for? It was household planning. What household? He did not answer. Claire waited. The silence grew. Finally, he said, my mother's expenses. Claire nodded. July 3rd. Furniture gallery. $4. $850. Was that furniture for your marital home? No. For your mother's home? Yes. August 11th. Serenity Spa. $640. Was that a marital expense? Evan's face reddened. My mother was under stress. I looked down at my hands. Do not laugh in court, Natalie, Claire continued. September 7th. Transfer labeled NP Settlement Prep. What does NP stand for? Evan whispered, Natalie Pierce. Were you moving marital funds to prepare for divorce? His attorney objected. The judge allowed the question. Evan swallowed. I was trying to protect myself. Claire's voice sharpened by 1 degree. From your wife or from disclosure? He did not answer. The judge wrote something down. Then Claire turned to Diane. Diane had not expected to testify that day, but her declaration had opened the door. Claire called her as a witness, regarding her claims of my instability and her receipt of marital funds. Diane walked to the witness stand like a martyr entering stained glass. She swore to tell the truth. That was ambitious. Claire began gently. Mrs. Pierce, you submitted a declaration stating that Natalie was unstable and fixated on money. Yes. You were aware that Evan transferred marital funds to an account Natalie could not access? Diane glanced at Evan. I knew he was helping me. Did you know the funds came from marital savings? I assumed he had discussed it with his wife. Claire displayed a text message. Diane to Evan. Don't tell Natalie until after the deposit clears. She'll make it dramatic. The courtroom went silent. Claire asked, Is this your message? Diane's face went pale. Yes, but that was taken out of context. Claire nodded. Let's add context. Another message. Diane. Once the car is in my name, she can't undo it. Another. Diane. Move what you need before she locks everything down. She's too controlling. Another. Diane. If she starts crying, tell the court she's unstable. I've seen this before with women who can't handle pressure. I felt the room tilt slightly, not from surprise, from the sick confirmation of seeing in writing what I had felt in shadows. Claire let the last message sit on the screen. Then she asked, Mrs. Pierce, when you described Natalie as unstable, were you aware she had accurate concerns about hidden transfers to you? Diane's lips trembled. I was worried about my son. That was not my question. I needed help. That was not my question. Diane looked at the judge. The judge looked back without rescue. Finally, Diane whispered, Yes. Claire said, Yes, you were aware? Yes. And you still characterized her concerns as instability? Diane said nothing. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Pierce, answer the question. Diane closed her eyes. Yes. There it was. Not dramatic, not loud. One word. Enough. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever been called crazy for noticing the truth, you know exactly what that courtroom felt like. It was not just about money. It was about watching the people who lied about you admit they knew your questions were valid the whole time. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what record finally proved you were not imagining it. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. The judge did not rule immediately on everything. Court is not a movie. But she ruled enough. She ordered Evan not to move, withdraw, transfer, gift, or encumber marital funds without written agreement or court approval. She ordered full financial disclosure within 10 days. She ordered that the hidden account be frozen pending division. She ordered Evan to provide statements for all accounts held individually, jointly, or in trust. She ordered temporary exclusive use of the marital home to me because Evan had already moved out and because his mother's involvement had introduced instability into the marital estate. Instability, but not mine. I nearly smiled. Then the judge addressed Evan directly. "Mr. Pierce, financial concerns supported by bank records are not evidence of emotional instability. The court is not persuaded by attempts to characterize documented inquiry as irrational conduct." I wrote that sentence in my notebook later. Documented inquiry. That was what I had been doing. Not obsession. Not paranoia. Documented inquiry. Outside the courtroom, Evan approached me. Claire stepped beside me, but I shook my head once. Evan looked tired, angry, smaller. "Are you happy now?" he asked. That question must be issued in some handbook for people caught by their own records. "No." "You embarrassed my mother." I looked at him. "Your mother wrote the messages." "You dragged her into court." "She submitted a declaration." He looked away. "You could have handled this privately." "I tried." "You made me look like a thief." "No, Evan, I made the transfers visible." He stared at me. For a moment, I saw the man from the 5K, the man who asked good questions, the man I thought would build a life with me. Then he said, "You always cared more about being right than being loved." The old Natalie might have shattered. This Natalie understood projection. "No," I said. "I cared about being safe." He had no answer. Diane would not look at me. Good. The next phase was uglier. Financial disclosure revealed more than the hidden account. A credit card in Evan's name with Diane as authorized user. A personal loan used partly to cover Diane's SUV insurance. A cash withdrawal 2 days before he filed. Payments to a storage unit. Claire subpoenaed the storage facility. Inside were items from our house. Not furniture. Documents. Boxes of tax records. Old bank statements. Insurance policies. A folder containing copies of my medical bills from fertility consultations. That last one made me sit down. Evan had taken my medical records from our home files. Why? Claire believed he intended to use them to support the unstable narrative or suggest I was emotionally impaired by fertility stress. He denied it. Diane said she had only told him to, quote, keep records. The judge was not pleased. Neither was I. At the next settlement conference, Evan's attorney was different. That told me something. The new attorney was practical, older, and seemed uninterested in continuing the unstable wife strategy. He looked at Claire and said, "We would like to resolve the financial issues." Claire said, "Good." The marital estate accounting took weeks. The hidden funds were traced. Some could be reimbursed directly. Some were accounted for in the property division. Diane was not a party to the divorce, but payments to her were treated as dissipation of marital assets. Evan's share absorbed much of it. The SUV deposit, furniture, spa charges, cash withdrawals, and settlement prep transfer all became part of the negotiation. I kept the house, subject to refinance. I received a larger share of liquid assets to offset unauthorized transfers. Evan assumed certain debt tied to his and Diane's spending. The baby fund, or what remained of it, was awarded to me separately as part of the settlement structure. That one made me cry in Claire's office. Not because I knew what I would do with it. Because the court recognized it had been harmed. Sometimes acknowledgement is the first repayment. Evan also had to sign a statement withdrawing claims that I had misused funds or acted irrationally regarding finances. It was not an apology. Legal statements rarely are. But it mattered, it said. The parties acknowledged that Natalie Pierce's financial inquiries concerned documented transfers and expenditures and were not without basis. Not without basis. Cold language. Beautiful language. I framed nothing. I am not that sentimental about legal phrasing. But I kept a copy in the green notebook. The social correction took longer. Diane had spent months telling relatives and church friends that I was unstable, controlling, and cruel. She did not issue a public apology. Women like Diane rarely do, unless it benefits them. But court records have gravity. Evan's cousin Monica called me in December. The same cousin who had told me she hoped I got help. "Natalie," she said, "I owe you an apology." I sat at my kitchen table, now mine alone. For what specifically? She exhaled. "For believing Diane, for repeating that you were unstable, for not asking what was actually happening." I looked at the green notebook. "Thank you." She continued. My husband saw Evan at Thanksgiving. Evan admitted there was money moved. Not everything, but enough. I see. I'm sorry. I appreciate it. After that, apologies trickled in. Some real, some curious, some fishing for details. I learned to tell the difference. To real apologies, I said thank you. To curiosity, I said, the court handled it. To people who wanted gossip, I gave nothing. My parents were steady through the whole thing. My mother came to court once and sat behind me with a notebook of her own. Afterward, she hugged me and whispered, "Clarity is not distrust." I cried then, in the courthouse hallway, not from defeat, from being known correctly. My father helped change the locks after Evan moved his final things out. He did not ask for details. He did not insult Evan. He simply replaced deadbolts, checked window latches, and said, "You'll sleep better." He was right. The first night alone in the house felt strange, quiet. The ugly kitchen tile was still there. The nursery that never became a nursery remained a small office with boxes of documents, and one plant I kept forgetting to water. I walked from room to room, touching surfaces. Mine. Not because a judge gave me ownership only, because truth had moved through the house and cleared the air. I opened the green notebook and wrote, "House quiet, account frozen, story corrected, still breathing." Then I slept for 9 hours. The divorce finalized in May, 1 year after Evan drained the baby fund. The final hearing was short. The judge reviewed the settlement, asked questions, confirmed agreement, and signed. Evan sat across the aisle. Diane was not there. That was the first kindness she had given me in years. Afterward, Evan approached me in the courthouse lobby. His attorney hovered nearby. I wanted to say, he stopped. I waited. "I'm sorry about the money." I looked at him. "For what specifically?" He flinched. Maybe he had heard I ask that now. "For moving it. For hiding the account. For letting Mom use it. For making you feel crazy when you were right." That last sentence mattered more than I wanted it to. I nodded. "Thank you." He looked at the floor. "I don't know why I did all of it." "Yes, you do." His eyes lifted. "You just don't like the answer." He swallowed. Maybe someday he would say it. That he wanted to be a good son more than an honest husband. That Diane's approval mattered more than our future. That it was easier to make me unstable than admit he was weak. That he moved money because he believed I would keep trusting him longer than the numbers did. But that was no longer my work. I left the courthouse alone. Outside, the sky was bright and cold. I sat in my car for a few minutes, hands on the steering wheel, feeling nothing dramatic. No triumph music, no clean happiness, just a tired, steady sense that something harmful had ended. Then I drove to the bank. I opened a new account. Only my name. New passwords. New beneficiaries. New savings categories. Emergency. Home repair. Legal recovery. Future. I paused before typing the last one. Future. Not baby fund. Not divorce survival. Future. I did not know what would go there yet. That was okay. A year later, my life looks quieter from outside, but it is much louder inside in all the right ways. I refinanced the house. I replaced the kitchen tile myself, with help from my father and 3 tutorial videos. It is not perfect. One corner near the pantry slopes slightly, and I love it anyway. I adopted a senior dog named Mabel who snores like a lawnmower and hates Diane on principle, though they have never met. I returned to therapy, not because I was unstable, but because being lied about by people close to you leaves marks. My therapist helped me understand that gaslighting is not only making someone doubt reality, sometimes it is punishing them for checking. Punishing them for checking. That was what Evan and Diane had done. They did not need me to be unstable. They needed me to be too tired, ashamed, or frightened to keep looking. I kept looking. The green notebook now sits in my desk drawer. Its pages are full of painful entries, but also new ones. Mabel vet. Dinner with Mom and Dad. Budget clean. Savings rebuilt. No contact with Diane. Good day. Very good day. Diane tried once to send me a letter. I returned it unopened through Claire's office. Some doors do not need one final conversation. Evan remarried? Not yet, as far as I know. He moved to a different apartment, sold the SUV he had helped Diane buy, and apparently set stronger boundaries with her after the divorce. I wish him growth from a safe distance. Diane sold the furniture. I heard that through Monica. I did not laugh. Out loud, the hidden account is closed now. The bank statements remain. Not because I want to relive the betrayal, but because records are anchors. When family myths try to drift back, sometimes I still hear Evan's voice in my head. You're obsessive. You're paranoid. You're not yourself. Then I hear Judge Klein. Financial concerns supported by bank records are not evidence of emotional instability. And I remember, I was not crazy. I was counting. The final lesson is not that every mother-in-law is dangerous or every husband who helps his mother is weak. Family support can be good. Helping a widowed parent can be honorable. Shared money can be managed with compassion. But compassion without transparency becomes a hiding place. And when someone calls you unstable for asking where the money went, do not argue with the insult first. Find the account. Print the statements. Save the texts. Export the metadata. Bring the notebook. My husband took his mother's side in court. Then the judge asked about the hidden bank account. And when the records showed the transfers, the spa charges, the furniture, the SUV deposit, and the messages telling him to make me look unstable, the story finally stood upright. I was not paranoid. I was not controlling. I was not broken by divorce. I was a woman who followed the money until it led directly to the people calling me crazy. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been told you were dramatic, unstable, paranoid, bitter, or obsessive, simply because you noticed what someone else wanted hidden. If Natalie's story reached you, I hope you remember that questions are not symptoms. Records are not attacks. Spreadsheets are not weapons until someone is standing in front of the truth. Keep the statements, keep the messages, keep your calm. And never let the person draining the account define you for checking the balance. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the documents that finally speak louder than lies. So tell me, if your husband and mother-in-law tried to paint you as unstable in court while hiding marital money, would you defend your character first? Or would you let your lawyer open the bank records and ask where every dollar went?